you so much, Matt. And now we are moved to the second panel, Bitcoin Scalability. I'm excited to introduce our panelists. Jagdeep Sidhu, the founder of ROLLUX, and Kerf Chang from Practical Network Ecosystem Manager, and Calvin New, CKM CEO and co-founder, and also Louis Low, co-founder and CEO of ScaleBit. And this panel is moderated by Lionel Investment at Spartan. Welcome. So I pass the stage to you now.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, thanks a lot for joining us today. Yeah, pleasure to be moderating the panel with our esteemed panel. And yeah, I guess before we get started, yeah, might want to leave some time for the panelists to, yeah, just give a short introduction about what they're doing. And maybe I'll just start first. So my name is Lionel, and I'm currently in the investment team in Spartan. And under the investment team, we manage 3 funds. So the first fund is a liquid long-short fundamental hedge fund, and the other 2 funds are venture funds, one in the DeFi infra space and the other one in the gaming and consumer space. So we have been looking at the BTC ecosystem very actively and have made a couple of investments in the entire space. Yeah, so without further ado, yeah, I'll pass the time on to Chang.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Jag. Sort of been in the Bitcoin space since the beginning. We established a layer 1 settlement fork of Bitcoin in 2014. We've been working on a lot of things since then. We researched Lightning networks. We found there was a flood and loot attack and a American call option problem, so you couldn't create assets on payment channels safely. We looked at trusted execution environments. We thought up and down about scaling blockchains through smart contracts, and came to realization that blockchains are court systems. So we've evolved to a modular tech stack now with data availability and smart contracts and a dual chain architecture. And now we've created ROLLUX, which is our layer 2 flagship product that is sort of a fractal chain and inherits the best parts of Bitcoin from the security perspective. So we're positioning it as a Bitcoin super chain.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ZKM. I'm also the co-founder of Metis, legacy, Ethereum layer 2. When we founded, Metis, we hope to scale Ethereum, but later when we really scale them, and we found that scaling Ethereum is not enough. The fragmented liquidity among different chains, that's the biggest issue. And in order to solve that, we deep dive into the very low layer, virtual machine layer, to develop our zero-knowledge virtual machine, and it can work with every chain to generate proof, verify the proof, and return the state to different chain and relay the state to different chains. So in this sense, it's a unified liquidity layer that we are building. And since we have been integrated with Ethereum, but now BTC is the largest token asset, and we are entering this space. But our big vision is that we hope to unify the liquidity across different chains. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi everyone, so my name is Kerf, and I do ecosystem and BD at Particle Network. Essentially what we are is that we are infrastructure and tooling solutions across 56 chains. So our core solutions include things like social login, embedded wallets, account abstraction, and we have been quite focused on the EVM space for the past 1.5 years. But most recently, I think with the growing demand in the BTC space, we've also launched a new product. It's called BTC Connect, which essentially connects the BTC native wallets to EVM chains and other Bitcoin layer 2s. So since then, we've been quite focused on expanding across within the Bitcoin ecosystem, and also trying to connect both the EVM, Bitcoin space, and also on the non-EVM side. Essentially kind of pushing towards a new thing called chain abstraction, which I can deep dive, I guess, a bit more into either during or after the panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Luis from ScaleBit. So for ScaleBit, we are a secure audit firm, very focused on BTC ecosystem. So we are working with a lot of projects in BTC ecosystem, including like Unisat, Marine Chain, and also a lot of other projects. So we are doing secure audit for the BTC ecosystem, but at the same time, we're also trying to build a lot of infrastructures for the BTC ecosystem. So I think our colleague will introduce about OpenTab. That's an open library for Bitcoin scripts that can be very useful for BTC ecosystem builders. So we are very deep into the ecosystem, so we're trying to help every project in the BTC ecosystem. So definitely looking forward for more collaborations with the BTC ecosystem players. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the introductions. And yeah, I guess maybe just to start off with the first question. So each of your projects are actually contributing to the scalability of Bitcoin in a very different way. So just wanted to understand, like, how have you all been contributing? And in so contributing, like, what is the, if you had to boil and identify a key challenge that you guys have faced, like, what would that be?
The key challenge with scaling Bitcoin? Okay, so you know, obviously there's two ways to scale Bitcoin. There's direct to Bitcoin, you know, Opcat, for example, try to scale with that. And the biggest problem we're finding is when you want to scale on Bitcoin, then you end up, the deeper you go, you end up at requiring composability and account representations of assets. You can't build an AMM DEX with UTXO, for example. So it's always going to standardize back down to like an account-based model. And when you try to scale that up, you realize there's many things that the UTXO just can't do. So even with Opcat, when you're trying to scale that, you're going to get vaults and all these other cool things. But when you try to do ZK rollups, you end up down back into a state model where accounts are represented, right? And when you're going down that road, you end up at basically almost a side chain, right? Even if you're storing the data on Bitcoin, you're storing the state on Bitcoin, you always have what's called a light client assumption, because even if you're using BitVM, which is a trust minimized bridge, you have to prove that your IOU Bitcoin is burned so you can move it back, right? And that security assumption is basically a light client. And so our focus of research has been, how can we create an ideal secure light client, knowing that in the future, everyone's going to be using an account-based model, even to scale Bitcoin. Okay, so, and then the other thing is data availability, obviously, when you try to pump it up and try to throw more data into Bitcoin. The good thing is the fees of Bitcoin are going to go up, and the subsidy of Bitcoin, it becomes irrelevant at some point as it deflates to zero. Actually, the block fees are going to cover the subsidy. So I view block subsidy as a bootstrapping mechanism for Bitcoin, where at the end of that cycle, actually, the fees will more than cover it, the cost to run the network. And so data availability is this big challenge, because you only have 1 megabyte with SegWit 4 megabytes of space to play with for your rollups. You know, you're going to end up doing some sort of ZK rollup. You can only do 50 to 75 transactions a second, even with state diffs of ZK rollups, right? And the maximum you'll do on average. So, you know, the challenge is, how do you do that, and how do you solve some of those problems? And those are the challenges and solutions we're looking to bring to the space, and realizations that we're presenting to the space through ROLLUX.
So I think in high level, there are two areas, or we can say two, main challenges. First, I agree, a lot of, technical challenges, like since Bitcoin cannot support smart contract, we have to find ways around how we really can, we can settle on Bitcoin. So, of course, we are expecting BitVM version 2, but it might still take some time. So I think, from the technical perspective, there are so many challenges lying ahead. But there's also another part I think is super important, is to, let's say in Ethereum ecosystem, these DeFi, farmers or LP, these liquidity providers, they are the key player of this ecosystem. So a lot of protocol and products are designed around them to make all the product and user experience very smoothly and attract them to use. But in Bitcoin ecosystem, the main player here are Bitcoin miners, right? And like these whales, large token holders and institutions. So how to align their interest to make this layer 2 truly meaningful to them and can get them really excited about this implementation. I think that's another biggest challenge, and that actually is what our team is working on. We hope to align the interest from these big miners, whales, and to truly make this layer 2 their layer 2. The layer 2 exists for a reason that it can produce sustainable and secure yield for them in the long term, not just one-time points. So I think that's my point, technical challenge, but also in the market, in the interest layer, there's a huge challenge that we need to face.
I think I agree as well, like a lot on the technical challenge. From us, it's more from the infrastructure and tooling standpoint. Because right now, I think as you mentioned, there's different sort of users. There's like the Bitcoin miners, Bitcoin whales. I guess more Bitcoin native users, and also the Ethereum and the other kind of people as well. So in terms of infrastructure and tooling, wallets, there's a lot of things. All of these users, they each have a different sort of, products that they are more familiar with. So I was actually having quite an interesting conversation outside, and then someone was saying they were looking for like a multi-sig for Bitcoin, which no one is building yet, or no established players have been focused on as much. So I think toolings like that allow like different sort of user base to really gain trust in the sort of products and tooling that they're using to interact with this different ecosystem. I think that's one of the larger challenge that we face. And yeah, I think the other sort of major challenge as well that we see in terms of users is that there's not a lot of confidence, I would say, in the Bitcoin ecosystem at the moment, because there's so many different like DApps, layer 2s that are popping up, and then I think a lot more has to be done in terms of like creating this sort of trust, and both on the tooling infrastructure side and also on to helping just users gain trust in the Bitcoin system in general.
Yeah, I totally agree with previous comments. So I want to add two more points. So actually, so far, there are actually not so many Bitcoin builders, developers right now. Even though BTC ecosystem is very hot, but right now most of the builders in the BTC ecosystem, they are still writing Solidity code, but they don't know how to program with Bitcoin scripts. So to be honest, developing with BTC ecosystem, especially Bitcoin scripts, is very different. It's kind of hard. Why it's hard? Because when you're writing Solidity code, you don't need to know about how event works. But if you want to write Bitcoin scripts, you probably need to understand how Bitcoin works. And also the documentation for Bitcoin is not that enough. When you're trying to implement some functions, you post some questions in the social media, people will answer, go to check out the BIPs. It's actually not that, even for the VIPs, it's not that clear enough. So it's right now the onboarding more developers, real Bitcoin builders, it's very important to scale the BTC ecosystem. That's one, my first comment. The second part is also trying to scale the BTC Bitcoin users. Right now, the whales or miners, they're just holding their Bitcoins. They won't participate in use or maybe send transactions. But I think my observation is that I hope one day there will be some stable coin, native stable coin in BTC, or even BTC, say layer 1s. For example, like Tether, or they can, Tether first come out in OMI ledgers, right? And then move into Ethereum. I think when they move into Ethereum, issue a lot of USDT in Ethereum, that's the beginning of DeFi summer. So for the BTC ecosystem, if there are some kind of stable coin that are kind of trustless and secure enough, and they can use the security of BTC Bitcoin, then I think a lot of users will use it. Whether you can implement by some state channels or Lightning work or maybe tablet assets, either can work. But if that happens, that can be probably a significant moment and bring more users to Bitcoin ecosystem. So I think that's also very important. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah. Fully agree with what you guys have said. Like, and I guess the whole points about like in terms of scaling Bitcoin, like the technical challenges, deriving security on Bitcoin itself, the layer 2s being side chains, like this raise like a lot of challenges for like some of the big stakeholders in the ecosystem in terms of like the security assumptions that they will face when bridging the assets to the L2s that they have to be comfortable with. So I guess this leads me to my next question. Like a lot of L2s have been popping up recently, and I guess I guess people generally accept that L2s are the way forward in scaling Bitcoin in terms from a transactions perspective or a depth chain perspective. So wanted to hear your thoughts on like the L2 landscape. Do you think that a lot of the current assets on native BTC chain will eventually be breached given the security concerns that you guys actually raised? And whether like the stakeholders, like the miners themselves are like comfortable with like breaching these assets across to the L2s, right? So do you think the assets will be breached over? Or do you think like a lot of scaling has to be done on the layer 1 itself, like what you mentioned, having a native stablecoin, the L1? So yeah, keen to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so DeFi summer is around the corner for Bitcoin. It's exciting for everybody here. You're a little bit early. Yeah, you have to be assessed with the security parameters here, because if you think of like Bitcoin as it's almost a primitive. You don't want to mess with that primitive. It's a very, very, it gets kind of esoteric when you're talking about the security parameters though, right? Because not many people know, you know, that some of the frameworks we're researching now is people don't know the security parameters when they're creating L2s. And the thing is with Bitcoin, you probably don't want to scale with layer 1, because if you start to scale with layer 1, you open up MEV attacks and all sort of other things we saw with Ethereum. And even Ethereum was going modular. And so the answer is to break things up into modules and then scale in layers. But you know, because of the lack of Turing completeness, which is really a good thing for Bitcoin, because it's really a store of value in a monetary stack, not a monetary system itself, you need to build them in the safest way possible. You need to maximize the security aspect of it. So we're kind of obsessed with trying to figure out what those security parameters are and maximizing, like almost to the point where if you have Michael Saylor in front of you and say, look, I've created this solution, it's the ideal solution ever to be able to move your Bitcoin into some other solution, then, you know, if he would agree that, yeah, you know, I would put a small percentage in there, that would be how I would look at that. And if he would say, no way, there's this chance where it's the Bitcoin's gone. That's the big problem. So like for us, the light client security, again, I was talking about is really the big challenge here, because when you're dealing with that, most of like I was saying, every Bitcoin scaling solution is going to end up in almost a side chain, because even the ones that do ZK rollups directly on Bitcoin, they're going to create an IOU representation of Bitcoin in that side consensus. And that ends up opening up this attack vector where you have this honeypot of Bitcoin available. The merge miners today, or even the Bitcoin miners today, they have the profitable incentive to actually censor Bitcoin and 51% attack Bitcoin if they want, but they don't do it because there's a Nash equilibrium that there's not much money to be made in that sense, right? But when these systems start to open up and you have tens of thousands of Bitcoin moving into them, a honeypot starts to be created. And it creates natural incentives for you to attack Bitcoin that have never been done before. And so the challenges are you have to get those security parameters right. You have to make sure that it's the safest possible. You have to make sure the crypto economic incentives are as safe as possible so that you avoid these situations where the honeypots are exposed and it leaves Bitcoin exposed, the confidence is affected, and then people think that Bitcoin won't survive, and people look at like maybe proof of stake, which has its own set of challenges.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a process actually, you know, like because the feature for Bitcoin community is that actually it moves not as fast as Ethereum. You know, I mean, when they accept new stuff, it takes time for them to accept this new, you know, playbook. You know, so I remember last time when we had another, you know, panel, someone mentioned that we need to slow down to build our tech stack, to have solid product, and to convince this community that this is something they can really rely on for the long term. So that's why I mentioned it is a process that we need more solid team, solid product, solid mechanism, security mechanism to make them, you know, feeling safe. And so I would say eventually, or you know, as a beginning, they might choose to, you know, put their assets stay on a Bitcoin layer 1, but eventually they will start to wrap. I believe this trending will happen sometime soon. So yeah, that's my point. It's a process.
Yeah, I agree as well. Like, not everything has to settle on the native Bitcoin layers. Maybe some of the use case or some of the users, some of them might need to, but for the majority might not. Somewhat like Ethereum as well. So I think it depends on so basically I think like each layer 2 or each chain kind of have to create their own sort of ecosystem and way for users to onboard to the ecosystem and also like to get more adoption. And then slowly it's somewhat like, I guess, like Solana, how it took off with like NFTs and memes, and then slowly more people will get to understand ecosystem and then use the chain, and then the technology will slowly evolve and kind of manage all these users. But so maybe somewhat in the longer term, but in the shorter term, I would say like the layer 2s play an important role in helping to get more users to use Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I think right now, new technology still need time to get recognized. For right now, a lot of BTC layer 2s, they are kind of side chains. They just doing custodian way to store their Bitcoin assets. But I totally understand why they're doing that, like using MPC and then do the custodian, because it's right now it's probably the most secure, mature. I shouldn't say secure. It should be most of a mature way if they want to go live. But right now there are so many new technology comes out. Even if you have a very cool technology that's secure enough and trustless enough, it still need time to make people recognize that. For example, if I have 100 Bitcoin, one company say they are doing centralized custodian, and then if they lose the money, they will try to pay me back, and then they have some kind of insurance, very centralized, but they worked for 5 years. Another technology, very fancy, very secure probably, and proved by some experts, but just they are new, but I can probably not trust them. So maybe I think it take maybe 1 or 2 years to begin the competition of new different tech stack. So right now people are still competing around TVR, competing around developers. But in the last stage, that's the competition between different solutions, technology-wise. So new technology will definitely come out, and the market will choose the winners. But we still need ties to make them to be selected. Yeah. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah. Very interesting perspective that you guys share. And I guess the consensus that I have gotten is that, like, yeah, perhaps right now, like the market is in a wait and see approach, and like no one is really, like, if you ask MicroStrategy to like fully go on board and like onboard all their TVL to L2s, that's not going to happen, right? Yeah. So I guess there's a lot of like more risk management required, especially on an institutional level, that some of these bigger players are actually considering. And the point mentioned about like technology having to catch up in terms of like eventually, because like even with the use of like light clients, ultimately it's really the security behind the light clients, bootstrapping the required validators and the amount being staked behind the light clients to ensure that, like, yeah, the amount breached is actually, the amount staked covers the amount breached, right? So the crypto economic security needs to be there. Yeah, and very interesting point. So I guess moving on to the next question in relation to modularity, the role of modularity in scaling the entire ecosystem. Like you see Ethereum ecosystem being scaled in a very modular way. And right now, I think you're seeing Bitcoin heading the same direction. So wanted to hear your thoughts on like the role of scaling Bitcoin in this way, as well as what does Bitcoin alignment in the modular ecosystem mean?
Okay, so a little bit philosophical. When you get into modularity, you think about the ZK future, right? How are we going to get to a decentralized cost model? When I mean decentralized cost model, I mean you're going to break up the cost of your calculations into the cloud of how much it costs your server, CPU cost. How many hertz are you putting to prove an AMM transfer, for example? In a blockchain, typically you have your hard-coded cost that's in the consensus, and every node has to check that, and therefore, in Ethereum, for example, for a certain opcode, they define how much gas it takes. And if you move that out to external cloud, to ZK, you actually could start to create a cost model that is direct to market instead of direct to consensus, which is much more expensive and less efficient. So with the ZK rollup, obviously the fallback now is how can you scale that up with DA? Because what we saw with Ethereum was the bottleneck was not how much CPU or the CPU cost was, because you can parallelize that. You can send many proofs all at once to many servers and make it really cheap and really fast. You know, 2-second block times, 1,000 TPS, no problem. And you're seeing that on Polygon, zkSync, and some of these other systems. The challenges with DA are obviously you need a place to store that. And so in Ethereum, they were storing it in call data, and they started to move it in, put it in EIP 4844. And so you definitely need to scale up your solution. But on Bitcoin, none of that exists, right? And that's the problem with building ZK rollups without doing that is you can't scale up. The other thing with ZK is you start to remove the relevance of time in your blockchain. You know, what I mean by time is in a monolithic blockchain, everything happens to happen in sequence. Even if it's parallel, it has to settle in sequence, right? If you're going to try to build, say, for example, something like if Elon does say, let's go colonize Mars, how's finance going to happen there? It's got to have a digital ledger that's going to be broken up. Either you're going to have it on, you're going to have a separate ledger there, or you're going to have one modular system where you're going to be settling with ZK rollups on one system that doesn't depend on ordering that happens in one place. It's going to happen in separate places. So the DA is very, very critical to figure out and has to be enshrined at the base layer of your settlement layer. And you have to do that on a side chain if you're going to do that. So, you know, having DA as well as a ZK-based system allows us to scale up much further and allows us to build in a modular way that maximizes the efficiency.
Yeah, I agree. And let's definitely talk about this after. Yeah, so, you know, from our observation, you know, a lot of different, you know, like Web 2, Web 3, they don't start from, or they didn't start from modular at the very beginning. It's, you know, when they come to a phase that a lot of usage, a lot of use case that they need this kind of stuff to be existing to make all this development more efficiency, you know, a lot of collaboration among different parties, then we need modularity. But since it has been developed for so long time, and also the technology of blockchain itself is also developing so quickly, so I think for Bitcoin itself, the process will be, you know, gradually shortened. That's why, you know, like DA, you know, sequencer, you know, ZKVM, all this stuff can come up with, you know, to solve the issue. So from my perspective, I think I definitely see this great future of this modularity, and yeah, I'm glad that we have so many builders here. Yeah.
I agree as well. I think can see some of like the even EVM modular players. They also have been exploring like modular solutions in Bitcoin. So I think it's definitely just a matter of time of like how many users are using like building in a Bitcoin ecosystem. There's a demand for that, and then slowly, and also I mean BitVM and Bitcoin ecosystem is just one, right? And then we have like EVM and SVM and ZKVM now as well. So ultimately, as the whole kind of Web3 industry grows, I think to kind of to make it more like cross-chain and interoperable across the different ecosystems, more modular, yeah, solutions will definitely come up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Kevin and also Jack also. So for the modularized I think I have two different angles. At first, it shouldn't moderate too early. Like when certain solution, Bitcoin scaling solution win, then you can begin to do modularized. Because if you modularize and later that module doesn't work anymore, then you are kind of too early to modularize. When have some solution that are mature enough, people want to optimize that to optimize the efficiency, then modularize can win. So that's general practice for modularize. And the second perspective is, right now I think Bitcoin layer 2 is already modularized. Bitcoin is the consensus layer, right? And then you can be the execution layer or maybe DA layers for that. So Bitcoin layer, especially Bitcoin layer 2 is already modularized around. But right now, we are not sure enough whether EVM is the best execution layer. Maybe there are some other solutions like RGB, like they have built their VM, and also some other ways to do the execution layer. So they are still competing. So maybe you still need to take time to see which one is the best one. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for, that's really very helpful in understanding the landscape and understanding like, in terms of like the Bitcoin ecosystem, like everything being developed in a modular way, a lot of various execution environments being developed like concurrently, and given the nascent stage, I guess the environment is very ripe for like new teams building the space, building execution layers, building DA layers, and even like shared sequencing layers to see like whether there are synergies to like work together in scaling the entire ecosystem. And I guess, moving on to like the final question from the panel. So wanted to understand like, because in terms of all the various L2s that have been built up, like a lot of these ecosystems or layers or chains like have to bootstrap their own community. So wanted to get your sense whether, like, what do you think of the BTC community? Are there like certain key attributes that or key ideals that they hold on to very closely? And do you like see the BTC communities like transcending all the various chains, or do you see like various chains like emphasizing certain values and attracting certain kinds of users there?
Yeah, I think this is a more complex question for me because I have to deal more with the tech. But I think in general, in proof of work, you don't have the system is made so that there's no human governance required. It's supposed to be anti-fragile and recover from attacks on its own, where proof of stake has been designed such that a human governance model can come and slash capital in case the system does break down, there's a fault. And that's an inherent design due to Weave's subjectivity in proof of stake. And proof of work doesn't have that. So DeFi farmers coming into Bitcoin, they'll be naturally inclined to think, okay, I'm on a secure system where if something breaks down, there is no human governance. Especially when AI comes, it's going to prefer that sort of model where there's no human governance that can shut some system down and decide the direction of that protocol. So the people will prefer the direction of Bitcoin being like more anti-fragile and not having a human centralized control as part of it. And the mining shouldn't be mistaken for centralization here. It's actually gets more decentralized over time due to economic incentives.
Yeah, totally. Ethereum users, they're very comfortable with the slashing, concept actually. But when we talk slashing with these Bitcoin miners or whales, it's not acceptable. I think that's a showcase of how different these two communities are. Also, as I have shared, for Bitcoin community, the real stakeholders, who are they? Miners, whales, and Bitcoin access holders. How to accustomed to their demand. I think that's the key. How you can really drive your product or your chain to be acceptable. So, yeah, I just thank you.
Yeah, I think now the only strongest culture is probably the Bitcoin whales and the miners. So they are there early and they've been like following and holding Bitcoin for a long time, and that's why there's a strong culture there. But for a lot of, I think, what's developing in the current Bitcoin ecosystem, like with all the layer 2s and everything, there isn't a very strong subculture and I guess, ecosystem. And every layer 2 has sort of a different approach. Like some, okay, I want to bridge more EVM users over to Bitcoin, and these are my culture, these are my users. For others, it might be like Solana, Cosmos. And for some, I want to target the Bitcoin maximists. So the approach, I think, that each Bitcoin layer 2 has been taking has been quite different, and everyone is just, I guess, in a way, like trying to do a bit of everything. And there isn't one that is very strong in terms of like determining their own culture and user base. And I think it's also tough, right? Because you don't know who the exact users are at the exact moment. So it will be quite interesting to see like which would be the layer 2 that does a good job in terms of defining these subcultures and community. Because ultimately, as we've seen in the EVM space, Solana space, like the culture and the users are the most important in driving like the long-term sustainability of the chain itself. Yeah.
Yeah, so for the cultural side, yeah, Kerf, because particle network, you serve different ecosystem like EVM and BTC ecosystems. Maybe you can feel the difference. Right now, BTC ecosystem, for especially those builders in Bitcoin ecosystem, they are relatively conservative. They want to make sure Bitcoin is secure enough. So they are really, when do the change, for example, OP cards, maybe take 2 or 3 years to merge into the mainnet. So those kind of changes are slow and in a secure way. So it makes Bitcoin the most trustworthy asset in the world. So that's the whole community culture right now so far. But I think right now people want to, especially for Bitcoin layer 2s, they need a lot of support from OP code and also the change. So might be some controversial, maybe some fights, just like maybe 6 years ago, like the BCH with Bitcoin. They are 2 different cultures. BCH, I guess, I think when I met Wu Jihan probably 6 years ago, the philosophy of BCH is they want to move fast. They want to be like a kind of species or animal that can adapt to the environments. So that's their philosophy. But Bitcoin core, maybe they want to be secure and stable. So in the long run, I think Bitcoin core wins. So we still like the way Bitcoin works. But right now, I think there can be kind of a trade-off between Bitcoin core and maybe the like OP cards can be a good good starting point to making some good change to Bitcoin ecosystem. It also including the Taproot upgrade. So it's actually bring a lot of possibility to the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I think maybe with more development coming, the culture can be changed a little bit, but it's good to keep it secure. That's the most important thing. Yeah, thank you.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fully agree with what you guys mentioned. And yeah, I guess like what was being brought up is really a lot about like understanding the needs of the current big players in the space. And yeah, in the BTC space, I guess that's a very unique space given like Bitcoin being the first chain and like the OGs being like the miners and the whales and their need for security, right? Because this whole L2 space is a very new concept to them and something that they are perhaps like not very used to for now. So it's a very experimental stage in relation to like the L2 space, like having different environments, SVM, EVM being built on top. I guess the culture will develop with time, given that a lot of it is just hitting mainnet soon, or like just hit mainnet. So like yeah, sub-communities might develop over time that differentiates them. And yeah, I guess this has been a very helpful panel and really learned a lot from all of you. And yeah, maybe I'll open up the time for any questions that you guys have.
Yeah, because we only have like 2 minutes left, maybe we can open for one question. Is there anyone who would like to ask question about the panel topic and would like to ask our panelists? Okay, so maybe we wrap up the panel right now, and shall we take a photo, the group photo? Yeah, maybe move a bit forward. Yeah. you so much. Thank you for the insightful panel. Next, we please welcome Sarah Chang, a blockchain researcher at ScaleBit.